What's happening, everybody? On today's show, Alabama finally looks vulnerable with more players hitting the portal. Is the dynasty dead? Also, Texas A&M, they jump Ole Miss for the #1 portal class. How'd they do it? And Auburn gets a new OC while Vandy gets a new quarterback. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. Today's episode presented by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We are free and available for you each and every day. Wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, we got plenty to jump into. Look, we've spent a lot of time this week talking Alabama, and we got to stick with the Tide. I mean, what is going on in Tuscaloosa as big-time player after big-time player is hitting the transfer portal? It was literally just a week ago. Nick Saban hits retirement, and then, they go on the search. They hire Kalen DeBoer last Friday. And Alabama in very unfamiliar territory as they are facing departures and decommitments that they did not see throughout the Nick Saban era. Alabama has seen a bunch of players hit the portal. Isaiah Bond obviously went over to Texas. We'll see what happens with a lot of these other guys. Dan Wetzel tweeted out, since losing the Rose Bowl, Alabama has seen Nick Saban retire, 21 players enter the transfer portal, 6 recruits from the classes of 24 and 25 decommit. A tough stretch for the Tide. Welcome to the real world. And I think that's the reality here is, we talk about this all the time. For as many Alabama fans as we have listened and watched the podcast, and we appreciate all you guys for watching, look, the rest of the SEC has been waiting for this day. The rest of the SEC has been waiting for the Alabama, we'll call it the downfall. I mean, again, we'll see. Kalen DeBoer could certainly overcome all this changing of the tide and hit the ground running. We always say winning cures all. If Kalen DeBoer wins a bunch of games this year, he'll attract recruits and they'll be off and running. But point being, I've just seen some Alabama fans say, "Oh, y'all are all just first time in 17 years y'all can come after us." Yeah, that's the point. Everyone across the SEC is enjoying seeing Alabama go through what everyone else has gone through at some point in the last 17 years. Well, Alabama's had it all figured out. They've had the best coach in the history of college football. Everyone else has gone through growing pains. Nobody at Alabama complained when, LSU fired Ed Ogeron and Nick Saban swept in and took Eli Ricks off their hands. Think of all the different struggles and issues schools have gone through. Auburn, multiple misses on coaches, Florida. It's just been Alabama's reaped the benefits. They've enjoyed massive, massive success. And so, when you're the top dog, everyone's going to kick you when you're down. And so as we jump into it, Caleb Downs, one of the big-time playmakers at LSU this past year, freshman All-American, he entered the transfer portal yesterday and was the SEC Freshman Player of the Year, had 107 tackles, picked off 2 passes, broke up another 4. Will have several years of eligibility remaining. He is the number 1 player, or was the number 1 player in the state of Georgia. Obviously over at Georgia, T-Rob, Tavares Robinson, was just brought over to be co-DC at Georgia. According to multiple reports, Georgia is the clear favorite to land Caleb Downs. Matt Zenitz and John Talty of 24/7 Sports reporting that. Downs would not be the first ex-Bama DB to go to Georgia either. Of course, they landed former Tide DB Jake Pope just a week ago. But Downs will have several years of eligibility remaining. We'll see where he ends up. There's also some talk that Ohio State is on the radar for him. But that would be a massive loss for Alabama. If they could bring back or convince him to come back and stay, Caleb Downs would be a huge piece of that Alabama defense next year. But being in the portal, it sounds like he is on the move. Some other pieces. Kadyn Proctor, he was one of the talented O-lineman, 5-star, came out of the state of Iowa, went to Alabama. It was an up and down performance this year. 6'7", 360 pounds. Struggled at times in pass protection, gave up some sacks, but nonetheless, he enters the portal, and a lot of people thinking maybe a return to Iowa could be in the cards for him. His recruiting class was a member of the All-SEC freshman team, and we'll see where Kadyn Proctor ends up, but that is your starting, left tackle for Alabama into the portal. Former Alabama defensive back Antonio Kite. He had entered the portal, and now we know he's going to Auburn. Auburn is signing Antonio Kite, and that's going to make that Iron Bowl rivalry even more heated. But, of course, he will go play there for Charles Kelly, who recently joined Hugh Freeze's staff as co-defensive coordinator. Of course, Kelly was at Alabama from 2019 to 2022, so he will reunite with Antonio Kite. Redshirted his first season on campus, played in 2 games in 2022, but AL.com saying that Kite is just the second scholarship player of the modern era to transfer from Alabama to Auburn. Corey Grant was the first in 2011. So other news, Texas A&M, they pick up a big piece Tuesday evening. They pick up ex-Alabama defensive back Desmond Ricks. Ricks entered the transfer portal, and now he's heading to College Station. Was a former 5-star prospect in the class of 2023, and was the number 25 overall player, number 2 corner in the country. Again, big-time get for Texas A&M and Mike Elko, his staff. They've been very aggressive in the transfer portal. And our friends over at TexAgs Radio, I saw this graphic they put out last night. I mean, this Texas A&M class is absolutely loaded. They have revamped the roster. Mike Elko has gotten to work, and according to the rankings, at least as of last night when I checked him, A&M's portal class jumped Ole Miss. Texas A&M now is the number 1 nationally portal class according to the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings. Most notably, recently they picked up Trey Watson, the Fresno State tight end. They picked up E.J. Smith, Emmett Smith's son from Stanford. Scooby Williams, the linebacker from Florida. Jaden Hill, the DB from Florida. They got Jabri Barber, the wide receiver from Troy. DeRicky Wright, the safety from Vanderbilt. Got some SEC flavor in there, but they're getting guys from everywhere. But Desmond Ricks going to Texas A&M. See what he does there. A few other notes on Alabama. They did suffer another loss on the recruiting rankings. 5-star defender Zion Grady decommitted from the Tide. He is class of 2025, 6'4", 220 pounds. Leaves Alabama with now just 2 commitments in the class of 2025 and drops him to number 27. Look, it's transition, right? This happens when you hire a new coach, and especially when you say goodbye to a legend. Former Alabama player Alphonse Taylor tweeted out, "Players transfer every day. That doesn't bother me. But what bothers me is being 1 game away from the national championship game, and instead of running back, you transfer. On top of that, you get a coach who was just in the national championship game. So all these guys moving on, he said it's, quote, no longer about winning." Alabama going to have a lot of fixing in that secondary. We just mentioned Caleb Downs in the portal. Trey Amos is in the portal. Rumblings that he could end up at Ole Miss. He's set to go visit Ole Miss this week. We mentioned Jake Pope to Georgia, Desmond Ricks to A&M, Antonio Kite to Auburn, Earl Little to Florida State, Christian Story to Kentucky, Terrion Arnold to the pros, Kool-Aid McKinstry to the pros, Jalen Key to the pros, and, of course, their coach, T-Rob, went to Georgia. It's going to be a very different-looking Alabama secondary next season. Malachi Moore's back, so you got him. Now, look, it's not all bad. If I could pull this back a little bit and let's be a little bit positive with the Tide. Chris Lowe had a piece up Wednesday night on ESPN where he talked to some of the current players about sticking with it and coming back. Inside linebacker Deontae Lawson said, "We've had some guys leave. We wish them well, but that doesn't change the standard at Alabama and our belief in Coach DeBoer. That's that he's going to lead us where we want to, and that's winning championships." Starting offensive lineman Tyler Booker said, "I want to wish all those guys well wherever they go, but just because Coach Saban is gone doesn't mean the standard is gone. He taught us the standard. And it comes down to, why did you come to school? I came to Alabama to play for Coach Saban and play to his standard. No amount of money could buy me away from Alabama and my legacy here." Strong stuff there from Tyler Booker. Jalen Milroe said Coach DeBoer stands out as one of the most successful and accomplished offensive-minded college football coaches. His coaching style and approach will bring good energy to the team. Malachi Moore said you could feel his energy, the positive energy, and also how open he was to listening to our opinions. We did our homework as players, and the dude has won everywhere. So there you have it. For any Alabama fan just frustrated with the news of the last 48 to 72 hours of guys leaving and decommitments and all this, those are 4 guys that are all in on Alabama next year. Deontae Lawson, Tyler Booker, Jalen Milroe, Malachi Moore. So positivity there for Alabama. One more note, Nick Saban made it clear, he's going to be around the program still as a retired coach. Alabama AD Greg Byrne was on with Paul Feinbaum on Wednesday, and he said, look, Coach Saban is going to be an advisor for us. He's been awesome. He and I talked about the coaching search. Somebody asked me, was he involved? I was like, man, I'm not very smart. Many people know that, but I'm smart enough to know when you have a chance to have Nick Saban involved with talking about coaching and football and decision-making and leadership. Shame on me if I don't take advantage of that. He said he and I talked this morning. He's been very helpful trying to talk to the young men that he's recruited here and just say, again, we're in a really good spot going forward. And he'll continue to be here and be part of this program, and we're happy for that. Saban's office at the athletic facility was cleaned out after his retirement, but Saban said he will have an office there at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So, again, we'll see in what role, what capacity Nick Saban is still there. Again, he's retired, so don't expect him to be running the defense or coaching DBs at practice, but he's around. And as Kalen DeBoer said over the weekend, he'll have 100% access to everything. One more note on Kalen DeBoer as he continues to build out his staff. We know that it was reported that David Ballou will remain as Alabama's director of strength performance for their football program. And now DeBoer is going to add another FBS head strength coach to his staff, but in a different role. Football Scoop reporting that Kane Womack's director of strength for the South Alabama football program, Matt Shadid, is making the move to Tuscaloosa. He's very deep roots to the SEC. He had stops at LSU and Ole Miss. He's worked at Southern Miss and Baylor, but all on the strength side of things. And according to Football Scoop, he will not be a strength coach at Alabama. His official title will be determined, but the position has been described as working directly with Kane with a focus on evaluating and developing players. So Football Scoop said earlier this week, Ballou had elected to remain with Alabama. His past history with Kalen DeBoer and Womack, they all work together at Indiana. So, again, there's some good news there for Alabama. Relax, Alabama fans. It's not all going to hell. But for the rest of the SEC, hey, celebrate. Bama's going through a little bit of turmoil for the first time in 17 years. So, again, a lot to celebrate on both sides. But we'll see. Again, is the Alabama Dynasty dead? We don't know. We won't know until Kalen DeBoer gets out there and coaches a game. And look, he took some lesser talent at Washington and got to national championship with it. So what does he do with Alabama? If you don't have all the elite talent at Alabama, can he take some middle tier talent and make them perform better? We will see. So, all right, we got plenty more to continue here on Locked On SEC. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day. First, a message for our friends over at eBay Motors. Look, passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors, they got everything you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance. They got, roof racks, exhaust kits, superchargers, LED headlights, whatever it is. With this cold changing weather, you want to make sure you got everything to keep your vehicle in tip-top shape. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors, they've got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. They got that eBay guaranteed fit, so your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. And with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need for all the prices you want, or at all the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and take home that win. Keep your car alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. That is ebaymotors.com. And we're also presented to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. Look, at the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make this year that'll take my business to the next level? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team that you surround yourself with. And that's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. Ask anybody watching this or listening to it, are you on LinkedIn? Majority of us are. We have a profile on there. So LinkedIn Jobs, they are number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. They also know small businesses. You're wearing so many hats and your time is thin. With LinkedIn, they're going to make the process very quick and easy for you. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. But look, you won't regret it if you go post your job at LinkedIn Jobs. They're going to help you find all the right people for your job very fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege is the website. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC, and spent the whole first segment on Alabama, so we kind of have a little bit of aftermath of or fallout of Alabama stuff. So let's do this. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch! Around the conference.
So some early lines for some big SEC games for next year are coming out from our friends over at FanDuel. Georgia, of course, looking to become the belle of the ball once again in the SEC with Kirby Smart and his Bulldogs coming up one game short. Fell to Nick Saban and Alabama in the SEC championship game, and that kept them out of the playoff. But heading into this year, Georgia brings back a lot, and they're hoping to win the SEC. But the odds from FanDuel are out, and they got a big game, September 28th against Alabama in Tuscaloosa. They currently put FanDuel has Georgia as a 3-point favorite in that game. Bama isn't an underdog very often at home in Tuscaloosa, but that will be the SEC opener for the Crimson Tide under new head coach Kalen DeBoer. Welcome to the conference, sir. But the Bulldogs also hit the offseason as a double-digit favorite for their season opener against Clemson. That will be played in Atlanta at the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. And we will see what Georgia looks like heading into this season. But, yeah, Georgia, a 3-point early favorite. If you want to go jump on that, check out FanDuel. Georgia, a 3-point favorite on the road against Alabama and Tuscaloosa. LSU also an early betting favorite from some in the SEC. Year 3 of Brian Kelly. Think about the past. You know, when many of these coaches hit year 3 or year 4, Nick Saban at LSU, Les Miles at LSU, and Ed Ogeron at LSU, all those guys were playing for and winning a title by year 3 or 4. So Brian Kelly, no pressure on you, but it's either this year or next year, you got to take that step forward. But LSU, the lines come out from FanDuel. They are currently favored by 1.5 points over Alabama. And that game will be played at home in Baton Rouge this year. They went to Tuscaloosa last year, but LSU favored by 1.5 at home against the Tide. So, look, it's the Nick Saban effect. It's no offense to Kalen DeBoer. This would probably be the case on whoever Alabama hired to replace Nick Saban. But nonetheless, just weird to see some early betting lines and seeing Alabama as an underdog in some of their games already. All right, Alabama, Paul Feinbaum talking on the Matt Berry show about the Nick Saban retirement and the state of the program. Paul Feinbaum said, look, it's really about trying to preserve what Nick Saban has built there at this point. He said that the callers into his show are still processing Saban's departure, and Kalen DeBoer has brought in some nice assistance, but Alabama's still losing players. Matthew Berry said that college football is at an inflection point after a couple cycles of the transfer portal and the NIL, and said we might see other legends step away as well. We've seen it in college hoops, and now we're starting to see it in college football. A lot of the old school coaches don't, or not that they don't want to adjust to it, but it's a lot. It's a lot to digest. Feinbaum said that in college football, there aren't many active coaches in Nick Saban's age range. Says last 4 years at Alabama, he finished 1st, 2nd, 5th, and 5th. That's hardly a guy who fell apart, but by his standards, it wasn't good enough. I think that's why he ultimately decided to move on. Now, Tommy Tuberville sounding off on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show this week. He was asked about Nick Saban's departure. Tuberville said, quote, wasn't really shocked. He and I have talked quite a bit about NIL over the last 2 years. He's very disappointed in the direction college football and sports are going. I think you just see that Nick is one of those guys that he has to have control of his football team. He has to have total control. What NIL does is it's taking a lot of the control out of the hands of football coaches and giving it back to the players, right or wrong. So Tommy Tuberville sounding off on the Nick Saban departure there at Alabama. All right, other news going on around. Let's make a stop over at Ole Miss as they continue to revamp their roster. Michigan defensive back Amarian Walker, a wide receiver that turned DB. He had entered the portal a week ago. He committed to Ole Miss on Wednesday, 6'3", 180 pounds. So adding to the DB room there at Ole Miss. Ole Miss also, their class took a little bit of a hit. Illinois transfer Tavia Nicholson, who had committed back to Ole Miss on December 9th, announced on social media he's going to play at Louisville. What in the world is happening? This is like multiple guys that have come from elsewhere, announced they were going to Ole Miss this offseason, and suddenly flipped to Louisville. We saw it with Tyler Barron. We saw it with Tamarian McDonald. I mean, we've seen it with a couple of guys. Very strange. But Tavia Nicholson, the DB from Illinois, no longer going to Ole Miss. He's now going to Louisville. Speaking of Auburn, or Ole Miss, but with an Auburn connection, Derrick Nix officially announces Auburn's new offensive coordinator yesterday. It was a move that was first mentioned by Lane Kiffin. So Hugh Freeze, he will be, he said he's going to be the play caller this year, but Derrick Nix going to come in and be the OC. So Nix spent the previous 16 seasons at Ole Miss, 12 as running backs coach, the last 4 as the Rebels wide receivers coach. The last 2 seasons, he was assistant head coach at Auburn. He'll be their new running backs coach with the departure of Cadillac Williams. This season, Nix helped Ole Miss's offense be in the top 20 nationally in scoring offense. Obviously, they bring back a ton of their wide receivers. They lose Quinshon Judkins, but they bring in Logan Diggs at running back. But Hugh Freeze said, I'm really excited to reunite with Derrick here at Auburn. He's an outstanding recruiter and coach. Spent nearly 2 decades of experience in the SEC. Nick said, I'm very excited about this opportunity at Auburn. Get back on staff with Coach Freeze. Haven't worked with him before. I have a strong understanding of what he wants offensively as well as culture. And another move, Kent Austin, who served as a special assistant to the head coach in quality control for the past year at Auburn. He's been moved to an on-field position as quarterbacks coach. He was OC for Freeze at Liberty. Lane Kiffin reacted to the news in a statement. He said, we're grateful for Coach Nix. We express our gratitude to him and his family for their contributions and dedication and success we've achieved at Ole Miss. Acknowledging the opportunity to become a full-time play caller with full-time play calling duties as OC at Auburn, we extend our sincere well wishes to the Nix family in this new endeavor. So again, Auburn, they got to turn this thing around. See if Derrick Nix can do that, working hand-in-hand with Hugh Freeze over there at Auburn. All right, some news over at Vanderbilt. Jerry Kill going to come join the SEC, former head coach at New Mexico State, veteran coach, been around since the 80s. He's going to join Clark Lea staff as a chief consultant to the head coach and a senior offensive advisor. Clark Lea saying, we're excited to welcome Coach Kill, proven builder of winning, strong cultures. His leadership and experience will be tremendous assets. Kill left New Mexico State at the end of the year. Now, news also came out last night. Former New Mexico State quarterback Diego Pavia is going to follow him, transfer to Vanderbilt. So we'll see what he is able to do over there at Vandy. Vandy also brought in former Utah quarterback Nate Johnson this offseason to compete for the starting job, as well as fellow New Mexico State quarterback Blaze Berlowitz. So 2 of New Mexico State's quarterbacks from last year now on the Vanderbilt roster. Over at A&M, if you missed it, defensive end Shamar Turner announced the other day he is returning to Aggie land for next season. Started all 12 games of his junior season. Helped A&M be one of the better defensive lines in the country. Had 6 sacks on the year and was 8th in the SEC with 10.5 tackles for a loss. So welcome back to him. A few other notes at LSU. Their return man Gregory Clayton is heading to the NFL draft. He was a wide receiver but contributed mostly on special teams. Also, report that LSU finalizing a deal with Missouri's Jake Olson, a title still to be determined for him, but he spent time at LSU, Northwestern State, spent the last 2 seasons with Blake Baker over there at Missouri. See what role he fills. And 2 other quick notes. Former SEC quarterback TJ Finley on the move again. Had a nice breakout season at Texas State. Of course, started his career at LSU, then went to Auburn, and then went to Texas State last year. Was really good, but he's back into the portal. Bobcats have already added another experienced quarterback to their roster. So TJ Finley, we'll see where he ends up. And then Texas, they will be hosting Washington transfer corner Jabbar Muhammad on campus for an official visit. rumblings that Jabbar Muhammad could go to Alabama, could go to Texas. So we'll see where he goes. But of course, played for Kalen DeBoer last year at Washington. We'll see if Bama is able to pull him in. All right, a few more notes to hit on around the SEC when we come back. Still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We told you about some of those lines already over at FanDuel. You need to go check them out. Of course, the NFL playoffs happening this weekend, and no better time to get in on the action with FanDuel. They are America's #1 sports book right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. We tell you all the time, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's where you sign up. That's where you get the special offer and promotion. You can make your first bet a layup. Once you're signed up and you're in there, you're good to go. Download the FanDuel app. Super easy to use. We check it every morning just to take a look at what the line movement's doing around the league. And, of course, all those big NFL games happening this weekend. And like we said, some very early college lines happening already for the 2024 college football season. Never too early. Go check them out, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and get in on the action. They are FanDuel. They are the official partner of the NFL. All right, roll along here. Locked On SEC. Just a few more tidbits as we wrap up today. And man, there's just been a ton of stuff happening to discuss. But more action to get in on here as we keep it rolling here. And let's talk a little bit about Joel Klatt. He has put out his way too early top 10 rankings for next season. And he's got 4 SEC teams in the mix. He's got Georgia sitting at #1 in his way too early rankings. Ohio State #2. He's got Texas at 4, Alabama at 5, and Ole Miss at 6. Talking about Ole Miss, Joel Klatt said they've been the portal kings, landed some significant talent in the portal. They bring back a lot of guys like Jackson Dart. Said, look how they played in the bowl game, particularly Dart. Could be a third-year starter. Has 28 starts over his last 2 years. Could be surrounded by a lot of talent, even though they lose Quinshon Judkins. But they do have Juice Wells from South Carolina. Trey Harris is back, their leading receiver. So really good there. How about Alabama at #5? Joel Klatt said he put them there solely based on reputation. He said, look, they hired an unbelievable coach. Is Kalen DeBoer going to be allowed to be himself? I'm not sure. There's a lot of unknowns with Bama, but Alabama's going to be at #5. Klatt said he loved Greg Byrne. Did not follow the prototypical SEC search. It didn't have to be an SEC guy to follow Nick Saban. He said, I don't care where they came from. I don't care what they look like. Kalen DeBoer was the best person for the job. Is it going to look exactly like Nick Saban? No, but let him be himself. Lastly, Klatt talking about Texas at #4. He said he expects a big season. But Quinn Ewers returning is interesting, in part because of how he played in the last game of the season against Washington. He said, is he really good? Yes. Did he have great talent around him? Obviously. But the difference is that Arch Manning is sitting there waiting in the wings. If there's one guy I would not want sitting behind. Quick SEC hoops nugget. The SEC decided not to fine Alabama men's basketball coach Nate Oates after he shoved Missouri's Aiden Shaw during a skirmish on Tuesday night. Greg Sankey put out a statement and said Nate Oates' actions were unacceptable and violated the expectations for conduct and sportsmanship as established by the membership of the SEC. Under no circumstances should a coach make intentional contact with a student athlete on an opposing team. After the game, Oates said he apologized to Missouri and head coach Dennis Gates. Said if a player did the same thing, it'd be an automatic technical foul. So Nate Oates apologizes, but he gets reprimanded by the SEC. And just one other nugget here: John Calipari picks up his 400th game at Kentucky against Mississippi State the other night, and he said one of the players came up to me and said, "Congratulations on 400," and I said, totally forgot about that. So John Calipari, been doing it a long time there, and 400 at Kentucky, pretty good. 400 wins with Kentucky basketball. #8, Kentucky beats Mississippi State on Wednesday night. And there you have it. I think we are all caught up on all things SEC. Ton of stuff going on, man. It's just, this is normally the dead time of year. It's not dead. There's plenty happening and going on. All right. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Come on back tomorrow on the show. Check us out. Thank you for making us your first listen. Now go make your second listen. Check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube, getting you caught up on all the biggest stories around the college or sports world, rather. They've got NFL, they got NBA, MLB, all of it's up there for you, including college sports as well. So check it out. Locked On Sports Today, streaming on YouTube. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.